Hello, everybody. Razorblade Mango here, and today I want to give my thoughts on Forgotten Anne, which is a new game right now that is on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. This is a game that comes from a new studio called Throughline Games, and this is their debut game. And this has been published by Square Enix, or as it's being called in the game, the Square Enix Collective. I think this is the part of Square Enix that kind of like promotes indie games among their sect, where you've got the Japanese division where they've done Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. You got the North American division where you've got Deus Ex and Tomb Raider and Thief and all this other stuff. And then you've kind of got like the center area or some like obscure thing where they promote these like indie games. I think like Life is Strange was like the thing that really kicked it off. But now we've got Forgotten Anne, which is a very interesting game, and I had never even heard of this game until I was listening to the recent episode of Jim Sterling's Pugquisition, and Laura K. Buzz on there was talking about this game, and it kind of piqued my interest because I was like, okay, this is narrative driven, hand drawn animation, kind of melancholic story, which that sounded right up my alley. And even when she mentioned that it was they were gonna use like a puzzle platforming, I was like, okay, well, I'm not the biggest fan of puzzle platforming, but I think I can jive with it if the story is really good. So I took a chance, bought it, got it on PC. I think it was on sale like 10% off or something like that. I think that's still going on. I think that's like one of the week one sales that Steam games sometimes do. And Xbox and PS4 might be doing it as well. And right away, like I went into this knowing nothing about the game. And right away I was already very intrigued by what I had played in like my first hour that I spent with it. Basically, you play as this girl named Anne who lives in this world called the Forgotten Lands, and it's this universe where items that have been forgotten in the real world, things let's say for example like a sock or a mannequin or something like that, things that are just in storage that everyone has forgotten. Well, they end up in this alternate world where they come to life and they are put to work in this world. And Anne is sort of like she's called the enforcer, and she's somebody that is kind of like who's like the top boss of keeping order in the land. And she works for this guy named Bonku, who's her master, who's like the big figurehead of this world. And her mission in this game is to deal with a rebel sect that is trying to sabotage the the master and his plan to create this thing that will bring all the inanimate objects back to the real world. So basically, you are just going out to investigate, trying to locate and hunt down these rebels and whatever. So, this game, I have a very mixed opinion of it. I've been seeing it getting a lot of like high scores and everything, and that's great. I'm happy that they've been, that the team is getting the scores and everything. But I've played about 7 hours of this game. I completed it a couple hours ago, and like I said, I have a very mixed opinion of it. And my kind of internal metric for deciding whether or not I like a game or not, or really think it's anything hugely worthwhile, is I ask myself, would I be willing to play it again? Would I be willing to play it again? And is it better to watch this game than to play it? And the first question, which is would I ever want to replay this, is no, I really would not. I don't regret the time I spent with Forgotten Anne, but it was a rocky road for me. A lot of peaks and valleys. More valleys than peaks, I'm afraid. And I think this honestly would be better served as a film than as a movie or as a game. Sorry, it's late for me. It's late. I'm recording this. I'm tired, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there while I was I had that the spark to talk about it. And let's just get the positives out of the way. So this game, a thing that's gonna like immediately jump out at you is that it has a very hand drawn aesthetic to it. A lot of people have been comparing it to the work of Studio Ghibli because, of course, but I don't think the animation is that good to compare it to that. There are points where the hand drawn style does work, and it does look like an animated film, but there are points as well, especially when it comes to the lip syncing, when the art becomes kind of cheap looking in a way, and that kind of took me out of the experience seeing the cracks in the armor, and it's like, oh yeah, that was definitely not hand drawn. That was more automated or something. But it does have a nice atmosphere to it. I like that the world is very gloomy and rainy. I like things like that. I like rain. Rain is cool. So it's got a nice color palette to it. A lot of nice little blues and greens, with the occasional spark of like bright colors like pink and yellow every so often to kind of contrast against the gloominess of the world. And it's cool, good stuff. A number of the time, I think the highlight for me as far as audiovisual presentation goes is the voice acting, which I think the voice acting is really top notch. And this has one of the best vocal casts, like best ensembles I've heard in quite some time in a video game. As far as, these indie games go, where a lot of the time they like to, and Bethesda, even big AAA studios do this all the time with open world games. Like Bethesda's a big one that does it, where you've got actors that are playing multiple roles in the game. But aside from maybe two characters being voiced by one actress, I I think everybody in this game was like uniquely voiced. They all had their own distinct personalities that came through for their vocal performances, and I really liked the voice acting. It's not a thing that I go on and on about, but for me, in a game like this coming into it, you don't really expect really great voice acting, but in a narrative game like this, you kind of have to have it. And I think the vocal cast does a great job. Like, they sell you on this 100%. Good music too. Good score. There are some occasional moments as well that I'll get into more specifically later. But this is unfortunately kind of where my impressions start to take kind of a dive. And the problem with this game, one of the big problems with it, is the gameplay is not very good. And I think this would have served it a lot better being something like a walking simulator, or something, maybe have light puzzle, like really really light puzzle platforming, or maybe like a 2D side scroller thing, or something. It's just, I don't think as a puzzle platformer it works very well, and it's very frustrating. And a lot of the movements and how you have to time jumps, even at 60 frames per second, like a buttery smooth 60 frames per second on the PC, it still lacks fluidity. It still has this really odd thing where the animation can throw you off sometime, and the way it feels is not very precise. Where contrast to something like Cuphead, where Cuphead is very smooth and very responsive, and you get a sense of good control even with the hand-drawn animation and everything. But this one does not. It does not have that. And when it comes to some of these puzzles, that especially the ones later on that require precise timed jumping, it just does not work, and it becomes very very annoying. And there are points where I literally was audibly expressing my frustration, where I just kept going, can we please just get on with this so I can try to enjoy the story? Because once I was really enjoying something, I felt like the game just kind of threw a roadblock at me. And not in a good way, not like in a good way where the challenge, was fun to overcome. This was just, it was tedious. It just grew to be like, okay, there's going to be this puzzle after this. There's going to be this boring ass puzzle. And some of them just really outstay their welcome. And there was one bit particularly at the end where it was a situation where you have to go through this long process of moving these platforms in a way that's where you're able to get to the next level. And not only that, you have to do the timed jumping thing, or you have to do the precision jumping. And it took me, like, one simple jump took me 5 fucking tries because of how off the timing is in these situations. Like, I could not get a good read on how to make these jumps successful because the controls are just so they feel off in terms of weight and fluidity. It's so fucking frustrating at points. And I was trying so hard, like giving this game so many chances with its puzzles, but it's just so irritating. I think Playdead's Inside is like the top standard when it comes to puzzle platforming now. Like even with a game like that running at like 30 frames on the PS4, it still was tight and you got a sense of what you had to do. And the puzzles are always not clearly laid out, but they are ingeniously, subtly designed to make you feel, they give you that aha moment. And you enjoy doing these puzzles because they're so cool and they don't repeat the same trick over and over again. And unfortunately, in this case, this is one where it kind of does repeat the same trick over and over again in some cases. And the trick already wasn't good the first time, but they keep doing it. And you just start to go, come on, guys, just wrap this shit up, please. There's this recent thing where, Green Man Gaming talked about, putting up that stat about how, let's measure how many dollars per hour you can get out of this game. And it makes a case for some games need to be shorter, in my opinion. Well, this game is one in particular that needed to be shorter. They could have shaved off like an hour, 2 hours just with these puzzles, or maybe just redesign the puzzles altogether. I don't know. But I just was not enjoying some of this stuff. It really just started to get on my fucking nerves. Also, some of the puzzles can be really vague. Particularly like in some of the cases where it requires you to like go up or down or to like perform a specific action to create like an illusion or something across the background. It's just, some of it is just, some of the art style, some of it is a little over animated where it gets in the way of where you need to go. You can't really get a good sense of, okay, this is where I need to go, this is how to do it. And you start to kind of get a little lost in how overly detailed some of the environments are, and which sometimes could be a good thing in some games, but this is a game where it's like, okay, this is a puzzle platformer. Just show me the puzzle, show me the platforms. I want to get past this. And I must say that would be more tolerable. Like the crappy puzzles, the occasional crappy puzzle would be a lot more tolerable if the story was really great. It was like damn fine and super awesome. But unfortunately, I think the story is just a big bucket of cliches. Like it's really cliche driven once you get into the nitty gritty of it. And I was calling things like a mile of fucking way. It was just so obvious what they were trying to do with this story. So let me describe the basis of what this is. It's basically your typical authority figure who believes in their cause fighting those evil rebels, but once the rebels reveal a terrible secret to the authority figure switches sides in order to go against their former boss, because their former boss was hiding a dark secret. Doesn't that sound familiar? Very, very familiar. uh, that's basically what Forgotten Anne's story is, and it just I like inside my heart kind of sank. Like, oh, this is what they're doing. Okay, like okay, whatever. And I get what this game is trying to do. I get what it's trying to do, and I admire it in some cases where it is trying to create this sense of morality, even if it is just an illusion. It is a damn good illusion at points where, unlike your typical Telltale game where the illusion of choice is just so like lacking nowadays in their games, the illusion of an actual choice. This is a game that really does make you feel like your actions do have consequences in very small, subtle ways. They don't impact the overall arching plot, but they do give you these interesting character beats where you go, oh shit, that decision I made early on really did have some kind of ramification with these characters that I've come to know. And I wish more games would do that, and I appreciate that it's here. Also, the game is trying to go for this like really melancholic, bittersweet vibe to it. And occasionally there will be a moment that will strike the right beat, the right note that this game is going for. For example, there's a scene early in the game where Anne comes across a character that she knew from her childhood that she hasn't seen in a very long time. It's like an old, like a really old, like camera that she meets, and the camera, Anne and the camera like reminisce about old times, and just from the delivery of the dialogue from the two actresses, and the way the scene plays out, you really do get a sense of that nostalgic sadness that the game is trying to do. This very bittersweet tone. And it's moments like that where I was thinking, okay, this is actually getting to me. This is something I can really get behind. But those moments are really few and far between. And even when they happen in succession, there is always going to be this roadblock up ahead where I was just so frustrated that all the cool stuff that I'd seen before just kind of like washed away out of my mind. And that should not be the case, because there are some really good scenes in this game. There's some really interesting morality moments and bittersweet stuff, and it's so good in some cases, but man, those valleys really do hit hard when you come across them, and it's tough. It's tough to even like this game, because I have no desire to ever want to play it again, and that's really unfortunate. If it was just a walking simulator, I probably would like this a lot more, but with this irritating gameplay that's attached to it, it's just that's the deal breaker for me. I can tolerate a crappy story. Well, it's not even crappy. I can tolerate a cliched story, but you gotta have really great gameplay attached to it. And this just doesn't. It just doesn't. So, I guess as far as recommendations go, would I recommend Forgotten Anne? And my answer has to be no. I don't recommend Forgotten Anne. I recommend people go on YouTube and watch the cutscenes from it, or watch like all the bits with dialogue, because it does make for a good movie. I just think as a game it is way too problematic to recommend to anyone, especially if you are not a fan of puzzle platforms. If you're not a fan of puzzle platformers, stay far away from this game. Just like I said, just go on YouTube and watch the cutscenes from it. You'll get a much better experience. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you like to see, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Forgotten Anne. And I will see you guys when I see you. Take care.